Welcome, councillors, independent members and officers to Audit and Governance. We've got a packed agenda as usual, so I'm going to rattle straight through and starting with apologies for absence. Apparently we have none. Are there any from the floor? Thank you. Next then, late items to be introduced by the Chair. I have none. We're rattling through. Third on the agenda is declarations of interest. Either declare them now or at the time of discussion. Are there any? Okay, thank you. Item number 4 then is outstanding resolutions. Everybody had a copy of the outstanding resolutions table. Would anybody like to speak on this, or are we straight into Q&A? Brilliant. Councillor Wright.
Yeah, just a comment. The last outstanding item is around risk management, the AI programme, and it's got a target date of this time next year. Is that? It seems a long time in advance to discuss issues around cyber security, especially when they're very prevalent at the moment.
I can confirm that that's a typo. It should be November 2025 for the time being. The resolution was to work with Andy to prepare future reports that had a public-facing report and then a confidential appendix. We've done that, and that's kind of duly noted. The meeting with the chair took place a couple of weeks ago now to discuss the future direction for the AI programme. So, yeah.
And just for information, Councillor Wright, more information is going to flush out quite naturally on the AI programme. So we're not going to force it into an individual separate item. We're going to wait until it flushes through naturally, but that's going to happen quite soon, early next year, I think was Andy's. Are there any other queries or comments on outstanding resolutions? Please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just that last item, the risk management in the AI programme. So, just so I understand it, is it so they're saying that they would bring no discussion about cyber security in public, from a public point of view? Because I'm sure there's some low risks that would be that could be easily be mentioned in the public domain. So I can't see why everything is sort of off the table kind of thing.
It's a fair challenge. So the relevant department head does get quite nervous about playing things out in public. That's one matter. But for another matter, the decision has been made for the time being that the high-level information will be shared in open committee, but anything more detailed will be in closed session. The compromise is that anything discussed in closed session that we identify that could have been shared publicly will, from that point on, be shared publicly. So it's a matter of experiencing it, deciding at the time what should and shouldn't be shared, and it can be from that point on. Does that answer your question?
Yes, Chair. Yeah, it's just obviously some cyber risks are already in the public domain anyway, so I can't see why they can't be shared in the public domain. So that's all.
Agreed, and you know, I see you being valuable in forming that opinion going forward. Anything you highlight at the time, we can factor it in going forward. Great point. Thank you. Okay, if there are no more queries or comments on the outstanding resolutions, the recommendation is to continue to track and review the outstanding resolutions on an ongoing basis. I suppose we really need to vote for that. That's why we're here. So, moving on. The next item on the agenda is to receive an update from external audit. We don't have Mark today, and I've gone and forgotten the name of. We can welcome Leah Parsons today to receive an update from external audit. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So for the account side, we agreed a timetable with the council, which was shared at the last committee. So there's sort of no update on that. We'll be coming in January to do some work on the higher risk and complex areas, and we'll share any findings from that with you. So our VFM work, we have to issue a draft report by the 30th of November to management. So this has been done now to Alison. I believe the chair has also sent a copy. And at this point, just to say that we haven't identified any significant weaknesses. We can't finalise the report until we sign off on the accounts. So there are still opportunities, but we don't see anything arising at this stage. We have, however, noted 3 other recommendations, which are just things for the council to sort of monitor going forwards. So the first of those is with the dedicated schools grant. So the council's reserves position has deteriorated over a number of years. So there is a projected deficit of 26 million by 25-26. Which is driven primarily by the high needs block. So the government's statutory override for these deficits is expected to end by March 2028. On expiry, the council would need to incorporate the cumulative deficit into their usable reserves, which would have a detrimental impact on the council's financial sustainability. So we're just suggesting that the council needs to work with partners to manage and implement a comprehensive deficit management plan to address the current and projected budgetary pressures going forwards. The next recommendation we've raised is around financial sustainability. So we haven't recognised a significant weakness in this, but we are aware, obviously, there are increasing cost pressures on the council and sort of decreasing reserves positions. So it's just suggesting that the council needs to ensure it retains effective financial grip and ensure general fund balances are sufficient to manage the risks to financial resilience and ensure that services can be provided with the available resources. And the last of the recommendation is just with regards to the local government reorganisation. So obviously this is going to be quite complex and does need sort of collaborative leadership and robust planning to ensure that there's a smooth transition and long-term success. So the recommendation in this area is that the council needs to maintain effective and transparent governance arrangements in the progression of plans for local government reorganisations, including effective leadership, and the committee should seek specific assurance once plans are finalised over the key controls in place to support the transition to the new organisation. I think that pretty much sums up where we are to date, but happy to take any questions on any of that.
Thank you, Leah. Do we have any questions? Or first, Councillor Kerr.
It's not so much a question, but it's an observation. I very much welcome that reference to local government reorganisation and the role of this committee, because it's something that I've been mentioning for a while. And if our current terms of reference are not strong enough to enable that to happen, could we have a review of that and bring the terms of reference back to our next committee meeting if we don't think it's going to cover it?
Yes, we can. Can we make that happen? Please, a review of the terms of reference.
Thank you, Chair. I think it will be okay looking at the terms of reference, Councillor Kerr. I think in terms of the assurance in relation to those controls for LGR are absolutely within the day-to-day business of this committee. So I think we'll be absolutely fine with that one.
Thank you. The query now is who wants to be involved. Jack.
Just pick up, I think there might have been a reference to council insofar as previous advice in respect of LGR and where LGR sits within the committee structure. And I think so far the view has been that it sits within scrutiny, but as that kind of emerging information about control measures comes through, then that begins to sit within the Audit and Governance Committee remit. So it's a kind of a timing question, I think, partly as to why so far the terms of reference haven't permitted the committee to get involved. But going forward, that will start to come into the day-to-day business.
Thanks, Jack. That's all valid. But what we want to do, I assume the proposal is to make sure that we are ready for what's going to happen, rather than anything that's gone under the bridge. We understand what's happened there, thank you. But yeah, I do think there should be a review to make sure that we're ready for anything that might come along. And again, if that's going to be reviewed by members of this committee, I guess I invite members who want to take part. Perhaps let Jack know after the meeting. time-wise, we're probably talking a commitment of maybe 1-2 meetings to have a look at it before the next session.
Is the suggestion that it's a kind of
Yep, the review in March, it's due to be reviewed by the entire committee anyway. So rather than create a working group, which is what you can probably tell I'm trying to avoid, yes, let's bring it forward and review it for the next meeting as a committee. Is everybody okay with that? Okay.
Because we created the additional February meeting, it should be able to fit within January or February, I think.
Agreed. So we'll bring that back in for review in the January session. So what, in practical terms, that means we'll get a copy in advance of the meeting, we review it in advance of the meeting, and we can discuss and resolve it in the meeting. Okay, thank you. Mr. Stone.
Thank you, Chair. And Leah, thank you for the report. Good to hear that the value for money opinion has been issued. Can you just confirm, I know we've got the statement of accounts coming to this committee in February for sign-off, so I presume that we are still on track to meet the backstop date.
Yeah, everything's still fine for February.
Any more queries or comments for external audit? Mr. Solomon.
Just on the dedicated school grant thing, that statutory override continues for a number of years yet, doesn't it, before it runs out? And then it will be sorted out after that, as I understand it.
Yeah, so it runs to 2028.
Ironically, it's one of the queries I raised with Alison, actually. Sorry.
I suppose what we mean by is going to be sorted out is still unknown, though, Philip, in terms of what the government is going to do with that statutory override at 2028. And I think that's why external audit have rightly picked that up as a recommendation on the value for money statement, because, you know, I think nationally the SEND deficits are rising to about £9 billion. So the government's response to be able to deal with that will be quite significant. I do know that the finance profession, including SITFA, have got some significant concerns around those deficits. One, in so much as we have seen situations where in some councils, external audit have issued statutory notices to local authorities on the levels of those deficits and the ability of a going concern for those organisations. So, you know, that external scrutiny is starting to ramp up, really. And also, you know, the Section 151 professional group, professionally, when they sign budgets off with their Section 25 statement, have got to be cognizant of those levels of deficit as well. So, you know, I welcome the responses from external audit on the DSG deficits and the risk that it poses to the council, as well as the comments around our levels of reserves, why we have made progress. You know, that continuation of that assurance and those levels need to be cognizant in our budget strategies going forward. So I welcome those comments. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you have any dates of when these things are going to happen, to signing things off, from your point of view? Oh, sorry. Do we have any idea of the dates of when these things are going to sign things off, and any idea of when it's going to happen?
Yeah, planning on doing it in February.
The backstop date's at the end of February. Yeah, and we've got a committee to be able to do that scheduled in February. Yes.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a good reminder. Please do remember to pop your microphone on. It's a big room and voice doesn't carry. Thanks. Are there any more queries or comments? In which case, the motion is to note the update from external audit, which I think we're all okay with. Do feel free to stay or leave if you like to refresh your coffee. The next item on the agenda then is the internal audit progress report and quality assurance programme.
Thanks, Chair. So it's our usual progress report. I'm sure you're all familiar with the layout and the content, as you've seen this many times before. Normally we start on pages 4 and 5 of this report because this shows you the progress on the audit assignments from both the current financial year and the previous financial year. Making steady progress. We've obviously got a number of audits that are in progress at the moment that we're trying to move those along. A number of audits as well have been allocated and are currently being made ready to start the fieldwork portion. I don't have any planned changes or planned delays to report to you, but I was just going to give you a small update on a planned delay that I brought to you at the last meeting. I'm sure you'll recall that I mentioned about problems we were having with moving the housing standards audit piece of work from the last financial year. Having problems moving that one forward, but that situation has now changed. We've now had meetings with relevant officers and they've supplied us with a number of documents, so that one's moving forward now. I'm going to move us into the audit coverage section. So that's starting from page 6, and you'll be able to see from the table at the top of page 6 that we've completed 5 pieces of work since my last update to you. The first of those was the Eastern Gateway audit. That considered the project which was funded by the Future High Street funding, and that resulted in a substantial assurance rating. There was just one low risk issue, which we've obviously raised to management, and they're intending to have that particular issue addressed by the end of the calendar year. Then we've got the deprivation of liberty safeguards audit. This resulted in the reasonable assurance rating, and we did raise a number of concerns with backlogs in their processes and issues around timeliness of taking actions and monitoring of cases. And as a result of those concerns that we had, we did raise moderate risk recommendations. There was also one low risk issue which management had taken swift action to address, and we were able to mark that as implemented even at the time of finalising that piece of work. Then we've got the adult safeguarding piece of work that also was given a reasonable assurance rating, and that just had one moderate risk issue being raised again around timeliness of updating and closing delegated inquiries. And again, management have agreed with that action and have said that they will have this done by the end of September next year. Another piece of work we completed in the period was on the Disabled Facilities Grant. So some of the grants that the council receive, internal audit, have to consider the use of them and then formally sign off a declaration to say that the grant conditions have been complied with. So that's what that piece of work was about. And then we get to the Stores Road piece of work. So this is the limited assurance piece of work, and we were looking at the arrangements for the management of stock, plant and equipment at the Stores Road depot. So we did circulate the full final report to all of this committee alongside the agenda pack, as had previously been requested and agreed at committee meeting. What I will say is you'll obviously be able to see from reading that final report that management have put forward a number of reasonable actions that they're intending to take to address each of the issues that we've raised. There was one recommendation that we'd made to them which concerned the separate holding of uniform stock across the 4 different service areas. Management, on considering that issue, decided they were going to risk accept that one, so we aren't expecting any action to be taken on that. And again, you can see in the report their reasoning for that. So what we've also done today is we've invited officers along to this meeting to get involved with the discussion on this particular piece of work. Again, that was something this committee had asked to happen when we're presenting anything that had a limited assurance rating. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause my presentation of this progress report and suggest that we maybe have a discussion around this limited assurance piece of work on the Stores Road depot. So I don't know if anyone wants to fire out any questions, and then we'll deal with those, and then I'll come back to the rest of the progress report if that's okay with committee.
Thank you, Hannah. So strictly with reference to the Stores Road depot then, Councillor Wright?
Yeah, I mean, it seems a very in-depth report. The thing that struck me was there's a lot of issues around different processes, and individually they might be fairly low risk. But when you bring them all together cumulatively, it does give a little bit of concern that, you know, routine practices around, inventories and stock control and all those things aren't a very high priority. And you can understand that to a certain extent when they're focused on delivery of operations. But I suppose the question is that a fair reflection, or does it, is it the wrong inference from all of those different recommendations?
Oh, yeah. So just in terms of, thank you, Councillor Wright. Just in terms of a general, reflection from me. Stores Road Depot is a challenging site. It's not one building. We don't have what other councils traditionally have as a stores service with an officer who manages all of our stock. What we have is a number of small buildings with services being delivered from those small buildings, and we have managers who are expert in their role, so they're expert in getting the bins emptied or the roads tarmacked or the streets cleaned, trying to manage the stocks and stores for their service as well. So I think what I'm really confident about in terms of my workforce is that everybody's trying their best, but I absolutely do welcome the expertise of internal audit just around those recommendations around how we can do it better. We have engaged with Toyota, and Werner's leading on a piece of work that's fundamentally changing the way we manage a lot of things in the depot, and I'm really excited about that work. Toyota, as you'll be aware, run their stores approach using a Kanban system, and are really slick in how they do that, so I'm really open to whatever we can learn. I would say, you know, we have got some gaps in terms of our processes. Lots of our information is probably on individual spreadsheets or pieces of paper in the depot that are filed in different storage cabinets, so I could see why it would look like it's not very well brought together. I absolutely accept that. It's pretty old-fashioned, if I'm being honest. But I am hoping that we can learn from this report and improve our processes down there. And the team are certainly up for doing that, John, as well.
Yeah, and I guess I would just add to that, very helpfully, the audit team have gone in, and most of these reports are quite general. They're not targeted at any one of those services, because we all recognise that there is a benefit in shared experience, shared best practice, and trying to learn from each other and having more consistent practice across the teams. And our team leaders, our service managers meet regularly as well. So, this will be part of their discussions and part of their meetings, just to give you that assurance.
Thank you. So, Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just looking at, I think, number 4 to do with the structure and height of boundary fencing. It's got a reduction date of 27. Is there a reason why it can't be accelerated sooner, or is it just because of
Yeah, the bound, obviously everything we do is bound by costs, and we have to take a risk-based approach to the things that we're doing, and as you can see, some of those things some of those risks have been accepted because we are in those constraints. I suppose, again, for reassurance, I know one of the points on there was the gate that we were going to review, and just to confirm, because the action should have been done by now, which it has, and those gates have been replaced. So replaced, and the locks reviewed, so that we've got something that's a lot more robust. I guess on those areas of whether the boundary wall, I think, is fairly robust, but there are areas where we know we've got sort of wire fencing, that sort of thing, and we always ensure that the items of stock that are around there are lower value or much more difficult, not something you could just nip over and nick. So we do take a risk-based approach to that. we are constrained by budget, and one of the issues again with Stores Road is it's a heritage building, so it doesn't just come with we'll put a wall up. There's a lot of things that you have to go through, and it's quite a process to get anything changed on the site. So it doesn't mean that we don't acknowledge it and won't keep an eye on it, but we are focusing on those areas of highest risk that we can change.
I think, sorry, can I just add as well, and I think it's worth saying, just because recognise, you know, this is a public meeting, we do have security on site too, yes, which gives us that extra confidence.
Thank you. Just a quick clarification. When we say risk accept, we don't mean that we are closing the risk. Am I right in the understanding?
In terms of the boundary fencing, so we are developing our depot, and there are some plans where we're currently having designs made to extend the depot to create a highways hub, and we have asked for the project team to consider the fencing within that. So if there's capital funding we can draw down to improve the depot, we'll include the fencing within that.
Thank you for the clarity. Councillor Bolton.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm well aware of the Stores Road depot site and the various listed buildings that are on there. My concern was the boundary, because I was given to understand the change in car parking on site was due to the thefts that was taking place. So, you know, we can't take cars into the site now because of the incidents that have happened in the past. So I hope they aren't occurring now. The boundary does need to be secure, as is said, and obviously our new site, under plans because of the new vehicles that we've got to take possession of, apparently is running behind schedule. So I'm a bit worried about that, listening to a Street Pride operative at a meeting we had last night in Blaegreaves ward. But I think it's important that the site is robust, the existing site and the new site that we're taking on board. I mean, if there are weak links, then we need to deal with them now and not get into the state where we have been of losing a lot of property due to we don't know where, but that is the reason behind it. There was a lot of thefts, and that's why we aren't able to go on site in cars. I mean, that's a retrograde step, but I hope staff have learnt from that. But clearly we need to look at all the structures on site, make sure the boundaries are well secure, and check on stocks, because we don't want to repeat, and that's wasting money, wasting taxpayers' money, if items are being theft from site and they're not recovered.
Thank you. Do you want to respond?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I don't recognise the comments Councillor Bolton's just made about the car parking. So we still have a car park on the site for employees. We made some changes to the internal car park to make them disabled parking bays.
Just to come back, I was told last time, not the last time I visited because I was in the Mayor's car, but the previous time I was told I couldn't go on site because of the thefts and that the ongoing visitors cannot go on. You can't take your car on. Yes, there were cars in site, but people who were visiting cannot take the cars on site because of thefts.
I've no doubt that's what you've been told, but there's a missing link somewhere. But all you can do is take the advice of the person who's talking to you at the time. I understand that, yeah. Unless you're driving a particularly impressive and insecure vehicle, perhaps. Does that answer your query, or okay? Councillor Kerr.
I feel that this has been a very timely report, given the new depot situation and the refurbishment of the existing and the creation of the new one. And I think we need to make sure that when we are going into that new phase, whether it's slightly delayed or not, we are really doing it at a proper level, and we'd go through next time with a clear internal audit, and maybe we can be programming in now to have a review of how well we've delivered that in, I don't know, 18 months' time or something. And it should be to make sure that we've covered all the points we should have covered. In terms of the comments here which talk about the garage and plant workshops where there's effectively no stock level reviews, I wonder whether there would be advice that could come through from Derby Homes, who are, and the way in which they have done and are doing stock reviews, so that we can learn from a bit of ourselves to do that better.
happy to respond to that. Yeah, absolutely, Councillor Kerr. I welcome your comments, and we do work very closely with Derby Homes. I think what I will say about the workshop is it's no secret that we are running on about 50% capacity in the workshop because we cannot recruit. We have half of the technicians that we need, which means sometimes managers are fixing lorries because we need them out on the road. So there are some challenges that prevent us from being able to progress, you know, an ideal solution in the short term, but we are really mindful of these recommendations and doing our best to implement them.
Thank you. Just remind me, did you say that you had shared this report with the project team looking at the new site?
Chair, so the owner of the actions is also has been the SRO of the depot development site, so he has made sure all of the recommendations are fed in.
Thank you. Okay, we've got a little queue. Mr. Sunderland first.
Just on the review you're going to do with Toyota things, is it going to cover such things as, do we actually need any stores? Can we just call off things from manufacturers? Can we reduce the amount of got in stores? Can we consolidate the stores into one? Is it going to cover all those sort of areas? And is it sort of going to move to, I think Toyota do a lot of just-in-time type work, don't they? So, I mean, I assume that is sort of thing, the issue that ought to be raised. And also, presumably, a lot of the vans have stores on vans, don't they? I mean, whether you need to increase the number of stores on vans, review what's necessary on vans, rather than have them in people going in and out of stores all the time. Is that the sort of area that's going to be covered? Because I think they should be.
Thank you. I think yes, Toyota will be looking at the whole system for us, and Werner can certainly update on that. We're also exploring something called impress stock in the garage, which is where the stock is effectively not owned by us. We pay for what we use, and it's managed by an external provider. So that's something the team are currently looking into. But I think just in terms of context, you know, when we talk about the stocks and stores, the main stocks and stores that people take out every day are bin bags, gloves, litter pickers, etc. They're the kind of consumables that we issue lots of. Things like plant and equipment are assigned to individuals, so we know who they're being assigned to, and they need to sign it back out again. So it's more, we're not, you know, we're not sort of repair people who need lots of different equipment. They're very basic but high numbers of consumables that are on the trucks. I'll hand over to Werner in case she wants to add anything about Toyota.
Yeah, just to say, yes, I absolutely recognise those are the skills that Toyota bring and challenge us along the way. So absolutely, we'd be looking at that. Obviously, it's a much more sophisticated process. You've got to work with your providers much more closely. You're looking at lead times and all of those sorts of things. And as Sam said, we have a huge volume of things, of stuff, and some of those things are very small. So it will take us a while to get there, but that's exactly the sort of challenge that we're meeting with the team. And we would hope to certainly embed some of that really good practice into the new depot where we've got a clean start as well. So yes, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Repton.
Yep. I've got page 22 on my computer version of this, but on the printed paper it's page 8, deprivation of liberty standards. I see that there was a backlog of referrals requesting an authorisation for deprivation of liberty safeguards had decreased from 608 to 133 in the period October 23 to June 24, but it's now back up to 396, almost 400, which is 3 times what it was in June 24. Have any idea why that's actually happened and what we intend to do about it? I see there's a moderate risk against it.
Just before we answer that, Councillor Repton, that was a great question. If you could phrase it exactly like that when we move back into the main report shortly, that would be fantastic. Thank you. Are there any more questions specifically in reference to the Stores Road depot? Please.
Thank you. Hopefully an easy question, but I saw from the main body of the report that there'd been an external review done in February 23 regarding some of the findings, and an audit around in 24 that covered some of the findings in this report. I just wanted to get your assurance that we'll understand why previous audits or external reviews hadn't been progressed, and really get your assurance that now we've got this report, these are going to get sorted in accordance with the timescales.
Absolutely. So I brought in somebody to help me in the garage to have a look around and give us some recommendations. And at that time, my transport manager left. He got a better paid job elsewhere. I then had an interim transport manager in. I've now got a permanent transport manager who's been with us a while and is committed to staying with us. So he's been given both of those previous reports along with this one, and that is part of his, I guess, our performance management with him. They are now his objectives to implement. So it was purely a resourcing issue. We had a little bit of upheaval, if you like, with losing 2 key members of the team at the time.
Are there any more issues strictly in reference to the depot? Okay, thanks, members. Hannah, do you want to finish the update before we take or retake Councillor Repton's question?
Yes, can do that.
By all means, yeah. If you need to leave now, and that's why. If you were wondering, if you need to leave, thanks for your attendance and updates.
So yeah, I was going to move into the recommendation tracking portion of the report, which starts from page 12. I think the first thing to note is that we've again had a reduction in the number of open recommendations. So the last progress report, we had 133 open recommendations. Now we're down to 122, so it's reduced again, which is good news. We've given you obviously the usual breakdown of the open...
Sorry, Chair, I'm struggling to hear it a bit. If the council officer just speak up, please.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Thank you.
So I was just saying we've had a reduction in the number of open recommendations. So at the previous meeting, we had 133, and then in this progress report, we've now got 122 open recommendations. We've given you the usual breakdown of the open, moderate and significant risk recommendations and provided you with the latest comments on the significant and moderate risk rated recommendations, which starts from page 16 of this report. Clearly, we've still got quite a few recommendations that we're featuring in this section. I'm not going to go through those in any great detail. I do acknowledge we've still got the 2 significant risk recommendations listed there around the residential care piece of work. But I'll just remind officers of the assurance that the Section 151 officer gave us at the November meeting that we held to discuss the Open Chief Executive's recommendations. And she'd obviously provided assurance that those matters were very much in hand and that we were looking to get those issues addressed fully and those recommendations signed off very shortly. There are a couple of risk accepted recommendations that feature on page 34 of this report. So one is from the pest control audit and the other is from the insurance claims handling audit. Both of these were low risk issues. Management comments regarding their decision to risk accept has been stated in the status update comments field, so hopefully they make sense to everyone. Before I open up questions for the committee, I'm just going to quickly pick up on the QUAPE, because that's also included for committee's information. That obviously features the status and updated positions of the actions that CMAP have taken to ensure continued improvement in our service. I'd say the action that's seen the most progress is the second one, which is about formally developing our approach around the use of data analytics and other CATs and identify benefits it could bring to the audit process. What we've seen in November is there's been a number of training opportunities for the CMAP team around data analytics and key functions and techniques in Excel to assist with audit and analytics. So that's just a little bit of progress there on the QUAPE for committee to take note of. Happy to take any questions on the actual report itself.
Thank you, Anna. Do you need Councillor Repton to repeat his question?
I think I've got it.
Yeah. I have to just say, look, I know I've struggled with my hearing, but the acoustics in here are really poor. I have raised this with Alexa before, and I think those of us that have been difficulty with hearing, even with hearing aids in, it needs to be addressed, because it means that people like me have hearing issues, can't take part fully. So yes, whilst I don't want to blame officers, and they often need to speak clearly and loudly for us to hear, but also in fairness to officers, in terms of our democratic service, we need to make sure that the audio is sufficient, that we can all partake properly, otherwise we're missing out, and that's not right. So in terms of the question was, it looks at deprivation of liberty. It's gone up by 3 times since we reduced it. So it's a question of why that's happened and what we intend to do about it. Now, in terms of the officer responding, I couldn't hear all that she said, and so that's not her fault. I think there's a problem in here. But I'd like to know what the answer is to that, please.
Thank you, and it's a very important point. I'll make sure that it's fed back from this committee as well for everybody in this room and everybody listening online. So thank you. We'll feed it back. Answer when you're ready.
Yeah, so first of all, yeah, you're obviously right. There was an improvement to the waiting list, and then obviously the situation did deteriorate. The improvement came about because they actually brought in a number of additional resources to help try to get on top of that particular backlog. That was obviously reasonably successful, and then I believe those resources were redeployed to help with other backlogs in other areas, and then as a result the numbers have started to go up again, so not ideal. I will just reflect that one of the things that we noted when we were undertaking this piece of work is that the Care Quality Commission do keep these kind of areas under review, and the last published data that they had at the time that we finished this piece of work was in 23-24. There was actually the same kind of issue across other local authorities, and actually there was only 19% of standard applications that were being completed within the statutory time frames that have been set out. So it does seem to be a bit of an issue, a widespread issue across local government. In terms of moving this forward, this is something that officers have been aware of even before of our piece of work. It is something that they are very mindful of. And it is an action that the Adult Social Care Improvement Board has been keeping an eye on for a number of years now, and they have got improvement plans in place to try and address this. But again, we're back to comments that you've heard before from officers about the resources that are available versus the level of work that is coming in. So it's something they're aware of. They do have an improvement plan in place. But I think there's an argument for maybe pushing some more resources into this area to help with that backlog further. But obviously that's something that officers need to decide and take action on.
Thank you. Does that satisfy your query?
Yeah, I think so. So I'm sure we all appreciate that there are important human rights implications here. Some of the things that we discuss, I think, pale in significance compared to issues like this. So I am at least partially reassured, but we need to make sure that we're fully on top of it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Kerr.
Can I just ask on the same subject whether there was, as part of looking at public confidence in the process, did you look at training and qualifications of people who are doing the assessments?
There was consideration to make sure that the right people were involved in the process, yes. We didn't necessarily go down to checking individuals' training and qualifications, but yeah, those general discussions were held with officers about ensuring the right people were involved.
Thank you. Oh, no, that's my apologies. Yeah.
Thank you. I just wanted to talk about recommendation tracking, because yes, the figures have gone down overall, but we've now had meetings with all 3 of the directorates over the past year, and looking at the figures now for the outstanding recommendations, they have gone down in 2 of the directorates, but not in place. Looking at the place figures, the delayed actions now and the delayed future actions now are actually more than they were in January 25 before we had the meeting with them. So I don't know whether another meeting is necessary. On the other hand, it's almost making us part of the process when we shouldn't be. So I don't have an answer to it. I just wanted to raise the point, and so there's a general sense of disappointment that the figures hadn't gone down and stayed down.
That's a good point.
I'll just add to that. That was a point I wanted to raise. So for me, 33 delayed future actions, what that means to me is there was an action date and then it wasn't met, so there was a new action date, and that new action date hasn't been met, and you've not had an update. And that to me is just, we should have very few of those. It's the second bite at the cherry and it's gone past and there's no update from an officer. And as David says, it's now at 33, and I think we're in a, compared to where we are with people and and the other directorate, you know, it's not looking good. So I think we need to do something with place. Excuse me. I've got to leave it. Apologies.
So 33 is the overall total, but 23 of those 33 are in place.
Councillor Kerr.
Yeah, can I just add to that discussion that there are 3 or 4 of the updates that we've received where we seem to be just waiting for confirmation. And if the information was provided and there was confirmation of what's been said, they could be signed off. And there seems to be we're falling at the last hurdle sometimes. And that could tidy things up quite a lot.
Thank you. So there's feedback from 3 people there. Do you want to respond? Or?
Yeah, I mean, just to provide assurance to committee, obviously you're aware that we introduced the K10 Vision system. Officers have got access to provide their own updates and their own evidence into that system. The other thing that happens within the audit team is that we do actually still spend time trying to communicate with officers to get updates, to get the evidence that we need. So I've got a couple of emails that were sent out yesterday from one of my officers chasing up on some of the recommendations where we've been assured by officers action has been taken, but we haven't been provided with the evidence yet. Once we get the evidence, we can sign it off. So we are being proactive. We are trying to follow up on these issues, but I completely agree with Councillor's point. If we could just get those, it's like we are falling at the final hurdle. If we could just get those, we could get a number of these issues closed.
Just to confirm, my criticism is not against internal audit in any way. I'm trying to support internal audit in getting the responses and getting the actions cleared.
Mr. Parkin.
Yeah, if I just give committee some assurance that I will pick this up with the corporate leadership team at the meeting next week, just to keep that emphasis and focus on these, because I fully accept what committee are saying, so I will do that. I think secondly, I just wanted to respond back to the deprivation of liberty comments around those increase in those. We have had some strategic conversations around some additional capacity that whether we should be putting additional capacity into that team to reduce that backlog. I think at the moment, though, because this is a national issue, the government are looking at the process for this, and they are giving an indication that they are going to review that process. So I think what we've decided to do at a strategic level is wait for that guidance to come out before we then determine what that additional resource may or may not look like. So those conversations have been happening around additional resource if necessary. It's been on the Councillor Repton. It's been on the government's timetable for a couple of years now, but it has gained some momentum recently. So we will keep you posted.
Councillor Wright.
Yeah, the audit of send out of authority placements, it sort of reflects on the conversation already, but also raises some concern. It seems some of the updates seem to suggest that there's some sort of tension between internal audit and the actual service providers in terms of the answers, but also the failure to provide evidence. And the reason why I raise it is there's such a significant area of spend, and one of the comments, like the individual placement agreements, which I assume, I'm no expert, are an agreement between the council and individual schools to provide the relevant education to the individual, but also because they're out of authority, you know, you're probably talking potentially into the hundreds of thousands of pounds for these placements. So not only are they really important for the individual that they get the education, which I assume that the contract actually is some sort of performance measurement to ensure that children are getting the education, but also that we're not being, pardon the phrase, ripped off because of these are out of authority. But it doesn't seem to be, you know, there's some... It appears to me there's a lot of risk and ambiguity in terms of the responses and the fact that you haven't got any evidence to support the improvements that they've signed up to. I don't know whether that's a fair assessment of the situation, but it did give me concern. You've got 3 recommendations there, all moderate, but again, cumulatively, do they represent, you know, some high level of concern?
So I think the first thing that I should just point out is that when we undertook that piece of work, it sat in a different directorate, service area to where it currently sits. So the person ultimately responsible for these things changed. So some of the audit findings and the actions were agreed with the previous responsible person, and then someone new came in to take these on. And I think there was maybe a little bit of a learning curve for that individual about what that team was actually doing that they'd inherited, but also maybe a little bit of a discussion that needed to be had about what our actual audit findings were, what we were getting at with our recommendations. And that was the discussion that took place in September when we had the meeting. Alison was in attendance at that. And I think off the back of that discussion, there was greater understanding there of what we were driving at to move these things forward. These are some of the ones that we are waiting on the evidence for. So once we get that evidence, we should be able to sign off. But I think we've kind of smoothed out that potential misunderstanding that was possibly there at that point in time. But what I haven't had is updated comments to put into the report for you guys to understand where we are with that.
Thank you. Councillor Repton.
Yeah, the problem for this council, like every council up and down the country, is that the SEND system is broken. And until we get to a situation where local authorities are funded correctly, and for many children with autism, they'll require classes of probably 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 or 10 in maximum. They'll require specialist, qualified and experienced staff who understand about autism. Because as Chris Packham said, when you've met one person with autism, you've met one person with autism, because it take many shapes and forms. And until it is reformed nationally and locally, we'll still continue to fail those families and those children that actually need it. And a lot of these packages have to go through, and I've witnessed in terms of constituents who have to fight years of battles to get what their children or grandchildren actually need. And it goes to a court, and often the courts decide that what the local authority are providing is inadequate, it isn't sufficient. And so the recommendation is made for specialist placements for them. When these children go to those schools, they're often then are settled and they start to make progress, which is in all our interests, both financially, economically, and morally. And so until we get the system right and get the funding for it, we'll continue to fail those children and those families. Thank you, Chair.
Well said. Are there any other queries or comments on the report, Mr. Dolman?
Thank you. Apologies for choking. Just the passion coming through. I'll try and be little bit clearer this time around. Two questions, if I can. On page 18 of your report, which is page 32 of the pack, just going back to a more historic deprivation of liberty report, which was done in October 2020. The status update the policy document's been updated, but is pending review by senior management and legal colleagues before being adopted. That's been the same comment now since October 2024. So I'm just really astounded that it's been in somebody's inbox for 13 months. Can't we get some leverage somehow to kick some of these low-hanging fruits, kick them down the bus? What a silly way of putting it. But surely we must have some leverage as a committee to get some traction on some of these. And I just feel that it's so much harder than it needs to be. Have you any update on that, Hannah?
No, nothing to update. I mean, I'll just remind the committee that this was one of the matters that you did pick up when you had your meetings with the people's directors. And this was something that the relevant director explained to you at the time about the delays for, but I don't have anything further beyond that, unfortunately. I can do some additional pressing of him before the next committee meeting to see if we can push to get more information on it, but as it stands, that is the latest I've got, unfortunately.
I think it's a bit endemic. You know, we had the meeting with Peoples, we've got an action date of October, which was a year after the original item, and we've gone past October and it's not been done. I think we're a bit of a toothless tiger. My last question is just on page 5 of your report, Hannah, which was on previous year's audits, I think. The brought forward assignments, if I read it correctly. There's 4 of those assignments where we're only between 10 and 45% complete. And if I read that table right, and they are previous year's audits, what are the barriers to getting those done? And do you need any help from the committee to move those forward?
So I'll take each of those in turn. So the first one that I'm seeing on the list is the asylum seeking children one. You're right, that is only at 10%. That has been halted for a number of months. In all honesty, we haven't had a great deal of engagement from that relevant head of service that we're trying to deal with on that particular job. We have involved their director. That has seen some improvement in the engagement, and we have this week got their agreement on the actual scope of that piece of work. So we're looking to push that one on. The next one that I'm coming to, I think, is the procurement and contract management platform one. That's the one that I did report a plan delay to you at the last committee meeting, just explaining that we'd done as much as we could on that piece of work, and we were kind of halting until the platform itself was in a more developed position. I've had some assurances that has started to move forward now. I believe the reason for the halt and the development of that particular platform was down to, again, resources within the IT team, but that is moving forward now. So I'm hoping that sometime between now and the end of the financial year, we'll be able to move that one forward a little bit more. If we can, what I'd said to you at the last committee was we would look to draw a line under that piece of work, and then down the line when the platform is in a more developed position, then maybe do another piece of work at that point of time, rather than keeping this one hanging on and hanging on and hanging on. I've got on next on the list, I believe, is the information security piece of work. It is only at 45%, but again, we are pushing that one forward slowly but surely. That piece of work was the one that we were starting to look at some of the AI development. So again, as I'm sure you can appreciate, that is a very hot topic at the moment for the council. It does require a lot of input from specialised resource within the IT team, and sometimes then getting the engagement and getting the information out of that team that's already under pressure has been proving difficult, but we do keep our efforts up and we are trying to move that one forward. And I have seen a number of emails and information requests being answered in these last couple of weeks, so I'm hoping we'll see some more progress on that one shortly. And then the asset management job, that had taken a long time to get off the ground, but we have started again to get some engagement on that one recently. I don't have an update on that particular one at the moment, but it is moving in the right direction, and my auditor isn't coming up with any reason why we need to be intervening on that particular one.
Thank you. Encouraging to hear about recent engagement. In terms of the overdue item, which has been discussed in an informal meeting, well, correct me if I'm wrong, committee, but the process now is to invite them into committee and hold them directly to account. So can we initiate that process?
Yeah, more than happy to do that, Chair, but I just wondered if it's just worth allowing me to just make a concerted effort to chase up those outstanding ones. I know that we've had the meetings, and I'm, you know, like the SEND, for example, we are absolutely just, it's the evidence, so you're probably just going to get the same thing back. So, you know, probably just allow me to try and have those conversations with colleagues, reiterate the concerns of committee, and I'll do that in corporate leadership team over the course of the next couple of weeks, and have a positive picture for you at the next meeting in January.
How about if we meet in the middle and we put this on the agenda for the next meeting, but we will remove it if you make some progress? Thank you. You have the specific references to the items handy, Mr. Dutton, save me looking them up.
Yeah, the one I picked out was that deprivation of liberty one, where it was it's been in the same status for 13 months now, and we had the meeting and it's still with a new action date, and that has gone past and it's still in the same state. So that should be an easy one to hold somebody to account for. I'm not saying get the whole council in for all the overdue actions.
Thank you. Absolutely. If members of the committee want answers, then this is the process. So that's the item that we'd like to bring into the agenda, but it may get removed. I hope it will get removed if progress is made in the meantime. Are there any more comments or queries on the progress report, QAIP? Okay, in which case the actions are to note the report and to note the QAIP. So we can move on to the next item of the agenda, which is the internal audit plan for Q4.
So again, I'm sure you're all used to seeing this report now. So it's obviously our report which sets out the proposed plan of internal audit work for the next quarter, and we bring this to you for approval. We also include within the report areas of potential audit work into the future, so beyond the next quarter. So looking at what we are actually intending to undertake in Q4, there are some audits that have been sat in that indicative plan of work historically, which we've now agreed with officers is the right time to get those off the ground. So, for example, schemes of delegation and Alistair Park, those are things that we've kind of had sat on our indicative plan of work for a number of months, and we've now decided, yes, Q4 is the time to get those ones off the ground. What I was just going to mention specifically was the piece of work on SEND that we have put into the Q4 plan. There's a couple of things I just want to make committee aware of. So it is sat technically within the people's part of the Q4 plan, but technically it is going to be a cross-cutting piece of work because of the intention behind that piece of work is picking up on the dedicated schools grant and that statutory override and the council's plans for dealing with that. So because of that financial element to it, it's going to be cross-cutting with the Chief Executive's Directorate. So it's listed as a people's piece of work, but it does fall into Chief Executives as well. And the other thing on that piece of work is, although the intention is to get this one started in Q4, we just need to be mindful that the council is actually expecting an inspection of its SEND services. So we just need to be patient with getting this particular audit off the ground. We need to wait for that inspection to be completed and then we can move this one forward. I don't have a date for that inspection. I can anticipate that question was probably coming, but it is on the cards. So we're just in touch with officers about, you know, when we can get going with that particular piece of work, should you approve this plan. I wasn't going to say anything more on it, Chair, but happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Hannah. Are there any questions? Councillor Wright.
Yeah, it's just a query on that SEND one. I understand that, is it Surrey that's just had their final agreement for local government reorganisation and they've had a huge amount of debt written off as part of that agreement? Does that include the SEND statutory override monies?
No, Councillor Wright, it was in relation to Woking and it was the borrowing.
I like your style though. Yeah, Councillor Kerr.
This, on the one below the SEND item, shared lives, I was wondering whether that was going to include what had been called Shared Lives Plus and is now the council working with a charity called, I think, 2 Generations to do a similar but longer term placement.
So in terms of the Shared Lives piece of work, we were just approached by the relevant director and her head of service to ask us to get involved with the preparations for that CQC inspection. I'm not sure that Shared Lives Plus would extend into that, but it's something that we can bring up in the discussion when we're planning that piece of work and more formally refining the scope of that job, because if we can factor it in, then we will try to. Okay.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to? Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. Just looking at the forward for the 26-27, just a question really. In terms of sort of the AI, what criteria will internal audit use to select what AI projects to audit first?
So a lot of our consideration of AI, like you've rightly said, we'll be considering the AI projects. So we'd obviously need to be taking stock of the projects that are underway, the projects that are in development, and kind of the maturity of those, and at the right point in time to get involved with them. Plus, obviously, what each of those projects we're looking to achieve, and the kind of the The bigger projects probably will warrant more involvement from internal audit than the smaller ones. You would hope that any learning we did from those bigger projects could be applied to the smaller ones as well. So we'd be thinking about that. We'd be thinking about the size of the projects, the level of importance, the level of risk and opportunity to the council, and using that as factors that we would be driving forward. As ever, we do undertake discussions with officers as well to get their views on the AI projects and if there's anything that they would like internal audit involvement with. So we can potentially offer up some advice or some guidance on how those particular projects are being delivered.
Thank you. Councillor Kerr.
Sorry, I've just spotted the one that's talking about Section 117 of the Mental Health Act. To consider the revised Section 117 policy, ensuring that the responsibilities at council and its partner organisations have been adequately defined and are being delivered upon. I think that is links with DOLS. So is this actually referring to the DOLS policy that they haven't agreed?
There is some overlap with DOLS, yes, but it's not exactly the same. I did want to do this piece of work as a separate activity because it's something that we haven't looked at for a number of years. This particular piece of work has been sat in the indicative plan for quite a while now, so I'm just trying to get this towards the top of the relevant director's priority list as something that we can get involved with and undertake an audit in.
I just wondered, because it's talking about that revised policy, and as you've just said, it's been somewhat delayed, I just wonder whether it is actually the same thing.
I don't believe it's exactly the same policy, but I haven't seen the revised DOLS policy yet, so I can't necessarily speak to the exact coverage of it. There might be some, some reference to it, but because I haven't seen the policy, I can't really comment any further, Councillor.
Thank you. Any more members? Okay, thank you. In which case, the recommendation is to approve the internal audit plan. Are we all in favour? Okay, that's approved. Thank you. The next item on our agenda today is the mid-year report from Treasury Management, quarter 2.
Thank you. Just got a short slideshow to go through with the presentation. Just go on the next slide for me, Jack, please. Okay, so this is a brief presentation to update the committee on the key points from the Treasury Management Quarter 2 mid-year report. This report is scheduled to go to full council in January for approval. Please refer to the report for full details. At Quarter 2, the council's Treasury activities remained in line with the approved Treasury Management strategy. Borrowing levels have been managed prudently and cash balances have been invested securely in line with counterparty limits. Debt maturity profiles remain well balanced and the Council continues to maintain strong liquidity and compliance with all prudential and Treasury indicators, except the activity that was breached and reported previously at Quarter 1. No further breaches have occurred and no significant risk has been identified in the year to date. The Bank of England's interest rate at Quarter 2 remained at 4%. All in close, our Treasury advisors are still predicting one more rate reduction before the end of the year. Next slide, please. As at the 30th of September, Treasury is forecasting a balanced budget position, which includes a forecast use of £1 million from the Treasury Management Reserve. Next slide, thank you. This slide shows the Council's actual debt position at the end of the quarter, excluding any planned borrowing for the rest of the year. At the end of the quarter, total borrowing stood at £580.5 million. This comprised of £530.5 in long-term borrowing and £50 million in short-term borrowing. Over the past 6 months, total borrowing has increased by a net £2.9 million. This is due to a new £60 million long-term borrowing that's been taken out, net off against £57 million in short-term loan repayments. Next slide, please. This slide shows that debt limits continue to be well within the operational boundary and authorised limits and that we have complied with this indicator. And final slide, please. So this slide provides the investment balances held by counterparty type. Invested funds consist of income received in advance of expenditure plus reserves and other balances held. During Quarter 2 period to 30th September, the Council's daily investment balances ranged between 48 million and 123 million. This reflects the timing differences between income and expenditure. As at the 30th of September, the balance was 124 million. The higher end of quarter balance was due to taking out a new loan and the timing of planned expenditure. That's the end of the presentation. Happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions? Councillor Kerr.
In the appendix, under paragraph 2.3, there's a list of the capital programme and the general fund for 24-25 to 27-28. And it includes Beckett Well Performance Venue, 48 million, and Beckett Well Performance Venue, 35 million. And I just wondered whether we're double counting or the label's wrong or why it's listed twice.
I'll have a look into it, Lisa, if it looks like it's double counted. I'd imagine it'd be the performance venue at 48 million.
Thank you. Good spot. Are there any more queries or comments? Thanks, members. In which case, the recommendation is to note the Treasury Management Outturn Position and Report. And we can move on to item number 9 of our agenda, which is the Counter-Fraud Policy and Framework. We're looking at this to approve the Counter-Fraud, Corruption, Anti-Bribery, Anti-Money Laundering Policy Statement and Framework document. And we can welcome back a friend to give us a brief talk on it.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, just to take you through briefly on the long title Counter-Fraud, Corruption, Anti-Bribery and Anti-Money Laundering Policy Statement and Framework document. Prior to 2021, we had individual policies, statements on each one, but we decided at that point to amalgamate them all, so it's all in one document, so it's more easy to find than people trying to find different documents. So this policy statement and framework document in front of you builds on the one you agreed back in 2021. The main thing there is that we've looked at certain areas, and there have been a lot of wording changes because the head of legal does like to just change the wording every now and then if he falls out with a particular wording in there. But we've added in a couple of key areas. One is reporting on counter-fraud activity and stats, really to build on the transparency code, and we'll talk a bit more about that one in the next report on the counter-fraud update. But it's just we do have to report externally on the website figures around counter-fraud, which is something that hasn't been done since 2019. And the other one is the new Economic Crime and Corporate Transparency Act that has a failure to prevent fraud offence under it. So we need to make sure that the council is robust enough and we won't fall foul of anything under there. And the other main area we've changed is around the delivery roles and responsibilities. This is something that this section has been completely rewritten because the committee raised that they wanted to find out more about the organisational structure, which was an issue that was raised through the fraud risk element, and it came up in one of the counter-fraud update reports. So again, that's been built into it as well, to sort of detail exactly who has what role and stuff, from the chief exec through all the officers, and also brings in members through the Audit and Governance Committee as well. So they're the key areas that have changed. I wasn't going to say too much more about it because it's really just building on that, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Oh, crikey, thank you. I'll start with Mr. Dolman.
Thank you. Yeah, it's probably an unpopular question, this, but I just wanted to sort of check on the responsibilities issue. So going back to the internal audit charter, it's very clear that internal audit should have no direct operational responsibility or authority over any areas that they audit. But it's clear from here that, and it's not simply, it's not a bad or good thing, but it's clear that, a head of audit partnership responsible for counter-fraud resources, internal audit will investigate the fraud. The deputy MLRO is Richard, and the deputy MLRO is the audit manager. And the first stop for reporting fraud is with those people. That's how it reads. So I'm just trying to square how, looking at the audit charter, how does that square with this, where it appears that internal audit or people in that department are discharging an operational role. And if we are happy with that, going back to the previous section where I was busy coughing outside again, we've got internal audit due to do 2 audits on fraud next year. So if 2 people in the audit department are the deputy MLRO, how can internal audit themselves? Who audits the MLRO function and who audits the fraud function if those people doing the audits are involved in the day-to-day execution of those tasks?
It's a good point. I mean, we do have a number of measures in place to report activity and suspicions, but I'll let the audit answer the query directly.
Traditionally, I mean, you're going to look at the financial procedure rules, and all the fraud section there points at internal audit. Internal audit has traditionally been the investigator of fraud as well, which is again another procedural matter. In this case, as head of audit partnership, my role, I don't get involved in Derby City Council's internal audit. That's down to Hannah, and Hannah reports have got dotted lines through to Alison as Section 151 officer, Emily as monitoring officer, Paul as chief exec, and also a dotted line through to Councillor Morgan McGeehan as chair of the committee. So she's got many ways of that. I don't get involved in audit. Hannah doesn't come to me and say, oh, can you review this, can you review that, what do we do on this? She's the head of audit for Derby City Council. I'm the head of the audit partnership. What my responsibility is more around looking after all the different partners we've got, meeting with the operational group of people, which is all usually Section 151 officers. So my role's not involved with the internal audit of Derby City Council anymore. Yes, it was previously. The reason that, when Alison and I have been speaking about this anyway as to how we're going to have the MLRO, at one stage it used to be the Section 151 officer with myself as deputy, but then again I was the head of audit for Derby City Council at that point in time. The thing is, under the money laundering reporting, you've got to have access to the NCA, and I'm one of the only people in the authority that has at the moment, so I can do that. All it is a matter really is of just putting things through onto the NCA's website. So it's just a matter of reporting things through. So I don't see a problem with that. Hannah is independent. And the other thing, of course, if Hannah's following, which we all do, the new global internal audit standards, there's a thing in there called professional courage. So if Hannah felt that I was trying to do anything like, convince her not to look at something or things like that, her professional courage will tell her that she's got various other lines as well. She will make that stance. She won't be influenced by me in any way, shape or form. So, but as the chair has said, there are a lot of other safeguards going through that, particularly with the Section 151 officer.
I think just to concur with what Richard said, I think we've strengthened that area, Tony, with the sort of the disaggregation of the duties between Richard as head of partnership and having the head of internal audit being Hannah now. I think that those controls have been strengthened by those splitting of those two roles for this particular area.
Thank you. I don't know if I'm splitting hairs or not, but it does say in the policy that, internal audit investigates suspected fraud and conducts proactive fraud detection and raises fraud awareness. And it does say that Hannah, or the audit manager, is a deputy MLRO. So, I'm still, having Chinese walls and that's fine, possibly, I don't know. But maybe we just need to make sure that the roles are properly articulated in here, what is and what isn't. So I don't know how Hannah, I won't make it personal, how the audit manager can audit fraud if that person is responsible for doing the original fraud investigations. I just don't know how that can happen. But it's up to the council, clearly, how they manage that. I'd just like to have my reservations noted at the way that we're currently structured.
Thanks. I think they are duly noted, and the fact that you've raised that today is a good example of that professional courage that Richard's talking about. It's noted and I believe being managed at the moment, but as with anything, it might evolve, and your comments are well made. Thank you. Councillor Kerr.
I think that raises another aspect of what I was going to say about the new policy document, which is I think there's a lot of good stuff in it, but I don't think it's quite ready for approval. And whether we want it to go away and come back and have some tidying up done, or whether it's we can come back again, or whether we can leave that to yourself, Chair, and the Vice Chair. It's just, you know, the starting point at the beginning, I think it actually talks the council down. You know, in the first paragraph, it says fraud and corruption is costly. And it's talking about Derby City Council as if it is costly to us at the moment, and in terms of reputational risk and financial loss. And I'm not aware of the reputational risk, and I don't believe that we've been told of significant financial loss, and I therefore think we are actually talking ourselves down. If we don't do anything about it, if we don't look after it, it could become an issue, but it isn't one at the moment. And there's a further cop later on, which again, under the bullet points of 4, it says we need to develop a more effective counter-fraud culture. Well, I think that we actually have a reasonable counter-fraud culture, and what we should be doing is continue to strengthen it, because it can always be strengthened. So I think we're doing ourselves a disservice in what the words we've chosen to use at the moment, and certainly as a policy document that is going to further strengthen what we're doing, it will immediately be out of date next year when we've done further things like get the training in process. As another point that I think it is actually incorrect, internally inaccurate, in that in the document at the end to say how do you report your concerns, it says you should go to your the 151 officer or your line manager. Now, a lot of people won't know who their 151 officer is because they are quite lowly in the organisation, and therefore it's good to mention the 151 officer. But that's not what it says in the document itself, where it talks about the 151 officer and the head of internal audit, I think. The internal audit manager, who again, people wouldn't know who they were. So the Appendix 1 is useful information and makes it more practical. So there are one or two other points that I pulled up, but I just don't think it's quite ready for adopting. And I don't mind, Chair, whether I feed these points into whoever's written the document and it's signed off by Chair and Vice Chair, or whether we'd like to have it back again and looked at again.
Thanks, Councillor Kerr. There's some good points, and I don't think there's any harm in tightening the language if that's what's required, or correcting any issues that might need correction. I think my preference would be that we as a committee could consider approving it subject to the things raised, you know, provided they're not unreasonable. And there's certainly nothing unreasonable come through there in your comments. So practically, can we do that, Richard, if we were to approve it subject to a few tweaks?
Can do, yes, Chair.
Does that work for you, Councillor Kerr? Okay, then that's what we're considering now. Then, committee. Thank you. There were more speakers, Mr. Sunderland.
Building on what Lucy just said, I think that bit at the end there could do with not just names, it could do with some contact and phone numbers and things like that. To actually say, if you suspect fraud, this is the number you ring, this is the website you do. As a matter of interest, I actually went on the council's website and I typed in, what do I suspect fraud, what do I do, or something like that. And it actually does come up with a fairly concise thing of what to do and how to report it. It does explain that, you know, if you felt particularly sensitive, you could put it in anonymously, and there's all sorts of reasons, and there's a little form you can fill in. So it's quite well set out. If you just ask the simple question, it does come up quite quickly, actually. And I was quite impressed with that. But I think, as Lucy just said, this document needs a bit more information on it, a bit more practical information. I think that's what it needs. Practical names, practical phone numbers, and practical web links. So I think that's what it needs, to be honest.
Thank you. Just before we take that into account, I'm interested to know, is this intended to be a governing document or a guiding document? And if not a guiding document, is there a separate document for that purpose?
There is a separate document, the fraud response plan, which will detail in more the actual procedures around how fraud is investigated, who to contact, etc. That's a separate document. That's not one I would bring to committee because it's a process document.
I wonder whether this is the best place for the granular guidance that's required. I mean, there's some information on the internet, and congratulations, your IP address is almost certainly flagged now. But I just wonder if that's the source of information. Does that need to be replicated in here, or does that mean we've got a document then which continually needs to evolve because it's got names on it? I don't know. I'm just putting that out.
The danger, Chair, with putting names into things is people's names, officers move on, etc. So you constantly have to change it. So really we need to have a look at a way of making this policy more flexible if that does happen. But I mean, we can expand this document. This is really just a summary document, this appendix at the back for the fraud response plan.
Agreed. So it's slightly different. For the matters that Councillor Kerr have raised need to be in the document. I accept that. But for things which don't strictly need to be in the document, I wonder if there's an alternative method of delivering that information, and that this policy can merely refer to that other source, which can be kept up to date. Does that work for you? Yeah, I think that's what we'll recommend then. Councillor Wright, did you have your hand up as well? Okay, it's moved on. Nice. Are there any other queries or comments on the counter-fraud, corruption, anti-bribery, anti-money laundering statement and framework document? Okay, in which case our recommendation is to approve the counter-fraud, corruption, anti-bribery, anti-money laundering policy statement and framework document, subject to changes which have been raised today in this room, and any other non-material changes that can be fed back to Richard.
Can I just confirm, Chair, the changes, once they've been submitted to Richard, would be considered, and then would it be for it to be circulated again to perhaps yourself as Chair to finish that process?
I suggest if they're material changes, yes. If we're talking about minor corrections and typos and things like that, it doesn't need to come back. But if there's anything material, then I'll review it with pleasure. Thanks, members. We can move on then to item 10 on the agenda, which is a counter-fraud update.
Thank you, Chair. This is the half-yearly, well, slightly more than half-yearly, at the end of October, update on what's happening around counter-fraud at Derby City Council. Just run quickly through it. It picks up on the National Fraud Initiative, what matches we've got so far, as could be seen. It's not a great deal of, there's no fraud being identified. It's mostly errors that we're seeing at the moment. I can confirm as well that the two data sets around adult social care have both been submitted on time, and on Monday we'll be submitting the other two around for the electoral register and council tax. The report also picks up on the council's counter-fraud team and their work, and gives you a table in there of all the various savings that they've generated so far in the first 7 months of the year. It also provides an update on Public Interest Disclosure Act and whistleblowing, money laundering, the Bribery Act and RIPA are also in there. The report also talks about the fraud risk management and picks up on the two areas that committee have highlighted in the past, one being the e-learning. The e-learning is, shall we say, I'm not in a position to roll it out just at the moment. It's on the e-learning system. We've been doing some testing of it. Unfortunately, the e-learning system wasn't working too well with video, so none of the videos were working in the e-learning thing, but that was across a number of courses on there, not just the Focus on Fraud Awareness one. The other thing was the links that we've put on there to all the various documents weren't working because they're held in SharePoint. So we've had to go back to the course creator, and they've updated. I've had a new file come through this morning, so we'll be able to test all that. The one big thing I've now found out as on Friday is that the council's having a new e-learning system. So we won't be able to roll it out just yet. We'll have to put it onto the new e-learning system, test it again, and then roll it out after January. And the other area in there, of course, was around the organisational structure, which we've also picked up within the the policy statement as well. And so that was again something else that was the committee had highlighted as an area they wanted to see more on. The other areas that I've identified in there are the new legislation again in the Economic Crime and Corporate Transparency Act, and then the external reporting under the Transparency Code, which is an area that the monitoring officer said, please raise this with committee, that we are tackling all of this because, as I said earlier, in 2019 we seem to have stopped updating things, but that was picked up by the Transparency Code audit that has come through to you in the past, which noted that there was no one person responsible for coordinating the Transparency Code at Derby City Council, and that's something that the monitoring officer has picked up on now, and she's driving that forward. So hopefully we'll get to have a full Transparency Code, and the fraud figures will be there for 25/6. And what we'll also do as well is report them through the annual report anyway. Some of the figures are hidden, not hidden as such, but are in this report, but not in the format they need to be for the Transparency Code. For example, we say the number of people in the counter-fraud team, but we don't actually stipulate how many of them are accredited fraud investigators. Within internal audit, for example, we've got 3 people that have been trained and have got qualifications in fraud investigation and presenting in court, etc. So the biggest problem I've got with the Transparency Code is the one requirement on the cost of fraud, because that is a very, very difficult area to... I mean, it's not too bad for audit. We can say, well, through our audit management system, we've spent X number of days on this fraud investigation. Tracy Thomas's team, the counter-fraud team, most of their work is all their work is pretty much on fraud. But it's those areas outside of that, like in legal, if they're doing prosecutions, then there's the trading standards and their financial investigator in there, finding out what they've all been doing. So it's pulling all that together and then getting a complete cost. We've taken cases in the past to court. You've known it was one case we knew was over £100,000, but the exact cost of it and the exact amount involved in that fraud, more difficult to say. For example, the police only went with a limited amount for the prosecution to court. They didn't go with the whole amount because not everything can be proved. It was considered, yes, that was involved, but let's stick to this. So it's, again, getting the whole entirety of the cost of fraud is a difficult... The NHS used to have a figure that they used to come up with. I don't know how they managed to come up with it, but they always used to come up with the cost of fraud on an annual basis. But it's more, as far as I can see, it's a very difficult figure to put together. I can't say too much more. As you can see from the report, we do have one element of whistleblowing, and we've also got one referral to the NCA, which we don't have those very often, but we've done that one. But again, we've not heard anything back on that. Then again, we never do from the NCA. So, but if I can't say too much more in open forum about that because it does allude to what the case may be. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Richard. Members, do you have any queries or comments? Councillor Wright.
Yeah, just a couple of observations and a request. So the National Fraud Initiative, every time we seem to get similar results, quite a lot of referrals, no frauds and lots of errors that we seem to be correcting in relation to information. So that's an observation. It doesn't... I think my point is that we've got a very good counter-fraud policy, but are we getting the right level of information and intelligence from the agencies that are set up to provide that, those complaints, etc.? So that's a National Fraud Initiative. I would recognise that the fraud investigation team, that seems to be an area where we are, where we do come across fraud, we are investigating it and bringing perpetrators to justice and saving money. The SARS, I mean, that's, I suppose it's, we normally get 0, and we've actually got 1, so I don't know whether that's success or otherwise. So I think my overall point is, it's very difficult to assess whether we're good, bad or indifferent, apart from our own investigation team. And what would help me, rather than the recommendation that the in the report is basically to note the report. Could we not have some sort of an assessment from yourself, Richard, to tell us that, you know, what the threat is from fraud in relation to the City Council, and your assessment in terms of where we are as an organisation, bearing in mind all of those issues, what your assessment is and our ability to counter that fraud, etc. I think that would be much more useful for us as a committee to be able to examine the report and then say we concur with your assessment or not, or vice versa. But I'm not sure as a committee we've got the level of expertise to actually interpret whether we're in a good place or a bad place in relation to fraud without your expert opinion based on, you know, you'll be able to understand the, you know, for example, like the NCA on suspicious activity reporting. Is that because, you know, that they're not doing their job and we're not getting the suspicious activity reports direct to us, or whether it's because we're a type of organisation where you're not likely to get those activity reports? So I suppose that's my, rather than just noting the report, I would like us to see some sort of assessment on those two issues, if that's achievable. Thank you.
It's whether you want an independent assessment, which is what Hannah will be doing, or you want my assessment, which is not independent because it's got, I'm overseeing this fraud area. So, I mean, pick up on your thing about the NCA and the suspicious activity reports. I've never known, well, we basically put them through to them and they just deal with it. So we know they never come back. Not in all the number of years I've been dealing with it have we ever had them come back to us on it. So we don't know what happens to them. As far as they're concerned, you know, we're reporting it from the authority's point of view. We're reporting it as we should do, and that's our duty done. We've reported it. Yeah,
it's really the other way around. Because the NCA will get SARs from all sorts of other agencies as well, and you know, all sorts of different transactions. And for me, it seems very unusual for an organisation that's dealing with a lot of transactions that we're not getting suspicious activity reports from other organisations feeding into the City Council.
I mean, again, that depends where, if they were going to do that, who do they go to? That's what, I mean, there's no mechanism for that, so I don't know where the NCA would go to if they had those type of things. I mean, if we're not getting any, it's a good sign that there's nothing suspicious going on.
I agree that receiving a small amount is a good sign, but none at all suggests a broken process, perhaps. Councillor Kerr.
Looking at the paper, I'm presuming that the 104 civil penalties that are noted here relate to the blue badges, and they've been how the blue badge, some of the blue badges have been identified, as well as the data matching. I would like people to be doing the honest thing, and you know, although this is only £7,000 listed here, in practice there would have been quite a lot more if that is the case. Because it was unlikely to have been the first time of use that someone's had their blue badge checked and found it wanting against the NFA listing. So I think we ought to be publicising this, and I just wondered if it's something that we could suggest we let people know that there have been, if that's the case, over 100 people who have been using a blue badge that belonged to somebody who's no longer with us or no longer qualifies for a blue badge.
Chair, I'm not sure if that civil penalties is all blue badges. I will have to check with the senior counter fraud investigator as to what she includes in there.
Thank you. And equally, I'm not sure who we would engage to publicise it. That's
Our people here, our comms team.
Our comms team. Does that make more sense to you than it does to me?
Yeah, it's probably, we can have the conversation and feedback, some of the comments from Audit Committee, whether they think it's appropriate to do that. I'd have to take a lead from the head of comms on that, but I can feed that back.
Certainly not an instruction or a mandate, but just that a member has requested consideration. Thank you. Mr. Dolman, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, thank you. I was going to go back to Councillor Wright's point. I guess the answer is no, but I presume local authorities don't have a national benchmarking service that they subscribe fraud data to, because in banking and finance you do. And it's all anonymised, and you go to forums and you discuss who's doing well and who's not doing well, because it's not classed as being competitive data, and it's a really useful thing, and that's in a way would be a good thing that these happen here. But I guess there isn't a national benchmarking forum. Might be worth exploring. I mean, it's obviously I'm sure you'd know about it if there was, but I'm quite surprised there isn't, really. Sorry,
as extensive as our remit is, I'm not sure that...
You need the audit commission back.
And I was just wondering, on a very minor point, the whistleblowing policy, it's in our terms of reference to approve. How often do we see that, Richard? Is it every couple of years or every 4 years?
I saw it a couple of years ago. It's not my domain. It's legal, so it's Emily Feenan and Paul McMahon in legal that look after that. But it came through a couple of years ago, I think, to committee.
Okay, thank you.
So it's usually every 3 to 4 years, unless there's any significant changes in legislation.
Thank you. Maybe that's something to think about on the terms of reference, to actually put on, next time when we review that, how often we see these policies would be quite helpful.
Yeah, I mean, that should be baked into each policy, but some oversight would be useful, I agree. Yeah, Mr. Webster.
Thank you. First of all, thank you to Richard for answering my questions on the transparency code. I think you did answer my questions. Obviously, I look forward to getting the figures there as soon as possible. My other small question was about the training. It's mandatory for members and council employees, also independent members of committees.
One of the things I did speak with the chair about this is to actually roll out in the first instance the training to the committee to see how they get on with it.
I look forward to doing it again. Thank you.
What's the lead-in time on the new training solution?
I mean, we've put it off, Chair, because of various other mandatory things that we're going through. So we were looking to roll it out sort of November time. However, I think we'll wait now until the new system comes in, and hopefully we won't then find another mandatory training course coming out at exactly the same time. So I'll need to talk to organisational development in HR as to the best time to do it, but hopefully it'll be January, February time that we can roll it out. What we need to do is make sure that it works properly on the learning system first of all.
Fair, it needs to work. I was just conscious that I didn't want to be kicking the can because of local government reorganisation. As long as we're talking January, February, that feels okay. But I wouldn't be comfortable waiting until we've negotiated with whatever the new council is. That was the point. Thank you. Are there any other queries or comments on the counter-fraud update? Noting what's been mentioned. Okay, thanks, members. The recommendation then is to note the actions being taken, which we've done. And we can move on to item number 11, which is the committee work programme. Members have had a copy of the work programme. Are there any questions or recommendations? Mr. Webster.
Just a short one, following on from what we've just been speaking about. I think we were promising the informal meeting an annual report on the Transparency Code, which doesn't appear on the schedule so far.
That's been scheduled for June 2026, which
okay.
comes into the next one.
Yeah.
But it has been flagged and it's definitely on there.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Kerr.
I just thought it might be worth reminding ourselves that the March item on audit and governance terms of reference, we were going to bring forward to probably January or February.
Got that, thank you. Anything else, members? Thank you. So we can move on again. Now, the next item is to approve the minutes of previous meetings. There is a placeholder in there so that we can go out of committee if we need to, although my intent is not to use it. Out of public arena. My intent is that we can discuss the minutes and approve them, but if we do want any discussion, I reserve the right to take us out of public forum. So having said that, the next item then is to review and approve the minutes of previous meetings. Are there any observations or queries, or shall we move them? Mr. Dolman.
There's always one, isn't there? Sorry. On page 138, on the pink papers, and Jack knows what I'm going to say, I think, on this. We've had a little email conversation. This was when we were discussing the ICO audit. There's nothing sensitive I'm about to say, so no need to panic. But as a general point, the fourth bullet point down was from an observation I made that the ICO audit we'd saw a year after the event, and there didn't seem to be a mechanism for this committee to keep a track on external audit actions and recommendations. And the request I made was that we find a way, like we do with Hannah, that if there are external audits with actions that are overdue, we should have a way of monitoring those. The ICO was an example, and I don't think that's been worked on. So I don't think we have got a mechanism of keeping a track on external audit actions. And that made me just look at the terms of reference. The other thing that ties in with that is item 13 of our terms of reference requires us to consider reports from external regulators, e.g. Ofsted, Care Quality Commission, Local Government Ombudsman, that impact on our area of responsibility, and that we should receive an annual report providing an overview of all external regulator activity at the council during the year. I don't think we get that report. So I think we are lacking in our oversight of external bodies and on what they are asking us to do. So going back to the previous action, maybe we need to have something in the committee work plan to have an annual report, but I also think we need to be a little bit better at looking at external audit actions or equivalent if there are any. So the ICO audit that happened, are we still overdue or we're not? That was the thing that brought it to my attention. So I just think we need to do a little bit more work on that area. Thank you.
And just to come back on that, did look into how the committee has managed this so far, and I believe that high-level information is given in the risk management annual report, which comes every January, but that is high-level and it's not direct reports. So I think there's a request in there that I think bring to light, which is legitimate, but that's how it's been managed so far, I think.
Thanks for that, Jack, and thanks for the observation. I do think there's merit in that, and I think we ought to explore ways that we could better see with more insight into the actions and resolutions of external audits. So that's something we'll have to take offline. Just for clarity, we're not challenging the minutes themselves. The minutes are accurate. It's just that this is a matter that needs consideration.
Yes, I think you hadn't mentioned it.
Thank you for the reminder. Thank you. So we've got that now. We've noted that. Yeah, Alison, do you want to come back?
Yeah, just probably as a suggestion then. So, for example, the Adult Social Care Inspection Report, that's been a report to Council Cabinet recently on progress against that inspection. I don't see any reason why those reports couldn't come into Audit and Governance Committee as well. You wouldn't want to get embroiled with the whole, aspect of the inspection, but I don't see any reason why those periodic reports don't come in here, just to give that assurance to committee as well.
Thank you. And I think it's great to make use of the committee. We've got expertise, both independent and elected, that can offer good insight and independent oversight. Thank you. Okay, so if we're taking those minutes as read, and thank you for the observation, that all that remains then is to wish everybody a well-managed and risk-free Christmas and New Year. And I'll see everybody in 2026. Thank you.